In this video, we're going to talk over the solutions to questions 4 to 6. You should have already submitted your answers on the Google form, but now you're watching the video to understand maybe if you got it wrong, maybe you can help find your mistake. So here's question 4. I've already copied down the original, but now let's take a look at your next step. Your next step should be to find zeros. You should have noticed some zeros. The 2 and the minus 4 make a couple of zeros. 2 of the positives and 2 of the negatives make 0. But we're left with the 2x still, and still we have 2 negatives because there's 2 more negatives than positives. The next one on the right, now the zeros are with the x's. I have 2 negative x's and 3 positive x's. A negative and a positive make a 0, so 2 of the positives with the 2 negatives will make a 0. 8 will still be there, but I'll only have one x because one extra positive x. So already we got a much simpler equation. Do you also notice that you can remove something from both sides? There's an x on both sides. I can remove one of those x's. I'm left with one x left on the left, and 8 units on the right. The other negative 2 just stayed. So here I removed an x. We are so close to being done. But remember your goal, I want x to equal something. So the next step here will be to add 2. I'm adding 2 because it will get me my 0 on the left, which gives me x all alone. When I add 2 on the right, I get 10. The answer is 10. Let's take a look at question number 5. Question number 5, your first step should have been flipping, because you should have noticed the parentheses with the minus in front on both sides. So remember, everything else copies, but you flip the stuff in the parentheses. So x will become negative x. 2 will become negative 2. On the right, we flip as well, and we flip the x to negative x. But notice the 4 is negative, so it's going to flip to positive. And then everything else just copies down. So I've taken care of the flip. My second step is usually to look for zeros. And you might see stuff you can remove. So I think I'm going to remove some stuff first. I see a negative x on both sides. I'm going to remove this negative x on both sides because I can. And that's a legal move. I'm going to copy everything else down. Do you see next how you can simplify? On the left, it's 3 minus 2. Well, that just equals 1. On the right, 4 plus 5, that equals 9 plus x. So here I just simplified. Finally, I see one last step to solving this equation. I like that there's only one x, but I want x alone. So what can I do to get rid of the 9? Well, I can add a negative 9. So that's my next step. Add negative 9. That makes a 0. So now my x is alone. When I add negative 9 to the other side, 1 plus negative 9 equals negative 8. If you're not sure about that, try to draw the picture of the tiles and find your zeros, or just simply use a calculator if you have one. Here is the solution. X equals negative 8. Last but not least, number 6. Number 6, we're going to start with a flip again because there are minus parentheses. Minus parentheses. And by flipping, I get rid of the parentheses right away, which usually is my first goal. Everything else copies, but inside the parentheses, we flip and flip. Negative y, negative 2. Again, on the right, everything stays the same that's outside the parentheses, but what's inside gets flipped and flipped. Negative 6, and the negative y squared turns into positive y squared. It looks really complicated right now, so I'm going to see if I can simplify. Make it simpler. I see simplifying in that this can be combined into negative 4y's. I still have my negative 2, and I still have my 2y squared. On the right, I notice y squared, y squared. So I'm going to put those together because there's two y squareds. I still have the minus 6 and the minus 2y. Now once I wrote all of that, I noticed some things they have in common. There's 2y squared that I can remove from both sides. Okay, I also see some negative y's I can remove from both sides. So I'm going to take care of all that right now. I'm going to remove 2y squareds and negative 2y. That goes away. Negative 2y makes this only two negative y's left, and I still have the minus 2. Again, this will go away. On the right, I'm going to have the negative 2y's also go away. So now I'm just left with negative 6. I'm so close to my goal. Let's see, my next step, I see another thing I can remove. I'm going to remove negative 2 from both sides because I have two negatives here and I have 6 on the right. So on the right, now I'll only have 4. On the left, I'll have negative 2y. So my final step, remember, is to figure out what 1y equals. So I'm at the point where I have all the y's on one side and all the numbers on the other. But I need to make sure I only have 1y, not negative 2y. Remember, your final step is to divide by the number. So I'm going to divide by negative 2 because I want to have this negative 2 go away. But I have to do it to both sides. So I'm going to divide this by negative 2, and I get an answer of positive 2. The correct answer for number 6 is positive 2. So hopefully that answered some questions and allowed you to check your work. If you still have questions, you need to make sure to ask your teacher and help figure out where you made mistakes. Remember, there are many, many ways to solve equations. So if you are getting different steps than I am, you might still be doing it right. So ask the question, point out that yours is different than the video, and ask your teacher about it. Okay, but the only way to do is to try and to understand it. So definitely ask questions if you still don't understand after you